The game is over. From now on, my rules.
My wife came home to find all her bags packed on the front porch. "What's going on, Jason?" Laura stammered, her manicured fingers clutching her designer purse like a lifeline. I calmly slid a basement key across our kitchen table, the metal scraping against the worn wood with a sound that seemed to echo through our suddenly quiet house. "Check the basement," I said, taking a long sip of my beer. The condensation dripped onto the divorce papers spread across the table like a roadmap to hell. Laura's face went pale beneath her expensive makeup. She'd always been beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, auburn hair that caught the light just right, green eyes that could melt steel when she wanted something. Those same eyes now held a flicker of fear. "Jason, I don't understand what—" "The basement, Laura, now!" She hesitated at the top of the stairs, her high heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Then she descended into what used to be my sanctuary, my man cave where I'd watch football and tinker with electronics. As the fluorescent light flickered on, I heard her sharp intake of breath. Scott Williams sat tied to my old recliner, duct tape across his mouth, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his expensive shirt wrinkled. Surrounding him were printouts of text messages, bank statements, and photographs. All the evidence of their 6-month affair laid out like a prosecutor's wet dream. 3 cameras on tripods captured every angle. "Jesus Christ, Jason!" Laura screamed. "What have you done?" I walked down the stairs slowly, savoring the moment. What I should have done months ago. "Have a seat, sweetheart. We need to talk." But let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here, how a 42-year-old IT manager from suburban Dallas ended up orchestrating the kind of revenge that would make Machiavelli proud. It started 3 months ago when I found Laura's burner phone hidden in her gym bag. I'd been suspicious for weeks. The late nights at the law firm, the new lingerie I never got to see, the way she'd started showering immediately when she came home. But finding that phone, with its treasure trove of explicit messages and photos, that's when my world shifted on its axis. "Can't wait to feel you inside me again," read one message to someone named Scott. "My husband's working late. Come over at 9. There were dozens of them, each one a knife twist in my gut. Photos, too. Laura in positions I hadn't seen in years, her face flushed with passion she'd never shown me. And always the constant mockery of our marriage, our life together. "He's so clueless," she'd written. "Still thinks I'm working on the Morrison case. If only he knew what kind of briefs I'm really handling." That night, I didn't confront her. Instead, I moved my pillow and blankets to the basement couch, claiming I had insomnia and didn't want to disturb her sleep. Laura barely looked up from her laptop. "Whatever," she'd said, already typing another message to her lover. For 2 weeks, I played the oblivious husband while I gathered intelligence. I installed tracking software on our shared computer, set up a hidden camera in our bedroom, and started following Laura's digital footprints like a bloodhound. What I found made my stomach turn. Scott Williams, 34 years old, divorced, a real estate agent who specialized in luxury condos downtown. He drove a ridiculous red Vespa and wore more hair product than a boy band member. This was the man my wife had chosen over our 15-year marriage. The affair had started at a legal conference where Scott was schmoozing potential clients. Laura had been drunk on hotel wine and attention from a younger man who told her she was too sophisticated for suburban life. Within a week, they were meeting at his downtown apartment twice a week, sometimes during her lunch breaks. But the worst part wasn't the Zex. It was reading how they laughed about me. How Laura described me as a boring tech nerd who thinks romance is remembering to put the toilet seat down. How Scott called me the placeholder and joked about upgrading Laura to a better life. That's when I started planning. I began with small things. I canceled our joint credit cards, claiming fraud concerns. I transferred half our savings to a new account, perfectly legal since it was community property. I started recording Laura's absences, documenting every lie, every late night at the office that was actually spent in Scott's bed. My daughters, Beth and Janie, 12 and 9 respectively, sensed something was wrong but couldn't put their fingers on it. Beth, always the perceptive one, started asking why Mommy was always on her phone, why Daddy slept downstairs, why we didn't eat dinner together anymore. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" she asked one evening while I helped her with algebra homework. "Why would you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because Tommy's parents did this same thing before his dad moved out. The sleeping in different rooms, the weird quiet dinners, the way you both look angry all the time. Smart kid. Too smart for her own good. Your mom and I are working through some things, I said, which was technically true. I was working through the best way to destroy her life. 3 weeks into my surveillance, Laura got sloppy. She started bringing Scott around our social circle, introducing him as a colleague at neighborhood barbecues and school events. I watched our friends, people we'd known for years, welcome this parasite into our world, while I played the unknowing husband. The breaking point came at Beth's school talent show. Laura sat with Scott in the back row, their hands intertwined when they thought no one was looking. I sat alone in the front, clapping for my daughter's piano recital while my wife flirted with her lover 20 feet away. That night, I made my decision. If Laura wanted to humiliate me publicly, I'd return the favor with interest. I spent the next month preparing for war. And let me tell you, there's nothing quite like righteous fury to focus the mind. I'd always been good with technology. It's what I did for a living, managing IT systems for a mid-sized manufacturing company. But now I applied those skills with surgical precision. First, I needed allies. I started with Diana Martinez, an orthodontist who lived 3 streets over. We'd been friendly at neighborhood gatherings, and she'd recently gone through her own messy divorce. Diana was everything Laura wasn't. Down to earth, genuinely funny, and she didn't need constant validation to function. "You look like hell, Jason," she said when I knocked on her door one Saturday morning. She was wearing gardening gloves and had dirt smudged on her cheek. Even disheveled, she was more attractive than Laura had been in years. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest," I said. "Have you seen Laura around town with anyone? Anyone who isn't me?" Diana's expression shifted from casual friendliness to something more serious. "Come inside. We need to talk." Over coffee in her kitchen, Diana confirmed what I already knew. She'd seen Laura and Scott together at restaurants downtown, holding hands at the farmer's market, kissing in the parking lot of the Whole Foods. Half the neighborhood knew about the affair, but nobody wanted to be the one to tell me. "I'm sorry, Jason. I thought about saying something a dozen times, but..." She shrugged helplessly. "Don't apologize. I know what she's doing. What I need now is help making sure everyone else knows too." Diana raised an eyebrow. "What kind of help?" I laid out my plan. Nothing illegal, nothing that would get me arrested or lose me custody of my daughters, just a systematic dismantling of Laura's carefully constructed life, using her own actions against her. "That's comprehensive," Diana said after I finished explaining. "And probably effective. But are you sure you want to go this route? Once you start this, there's no taking it back." She started it when she decided to screw around behind my back. "I'm just going to finish it." Diana nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" The first phase was information warfare. I created anonymous email accounts and social media profiles, then started reaching out to Laura's professional network. Her law firm had strict policies about moral conduct. Affairs could damage client relationships and the firm's reputation. I didn't send anything directly to her boss, but I made sure rumors started circulating. I also reached out to Scott's real estate clients, posing as a concerned citizen who'd heard troubling things about his business practices. Nothing libelous, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. "I heard he's been having some personal issues that might affect his professional judgment," I'd write. "You might want to verify his references more carefully." The beauty of small-town gossip is that it spreads like wildfire once you light the first match. Within 2 weeks, I started hearing whispers at the grocery store, at Beth's soccer games, at the gym where I'd started working out to burn off my rage. "Did you hear about Laura Fairburn?" I overheard at the coffee shop. "Apparently she's been stepping out on Jason with some younger guy." "I always thought she was stuck up," came the reply. "Poor Jason. He seems like such a nice guy." The second phase targeted Scott directly. I researched his business, his finances, his social media presence. Scott was the kind of guy who posted everything online. His expensive dinners, his workout routine, his philosophical thoughts about success and relationships. He also had a gambling problem, based on his frequent posts from the local casino and racetrack. I started with his Vespa. One night, I followed him to his favorite bar downtown and disabled his scooter in the parking lot. Nothing permanent, just loosened a few key components so it would break down on his way home. I left a note under his helmet. "Karma's a witch. So is your girlfriend." Next, I targeted his apartment. Scott lived in one of those trendy loft buildings downtown, the kind with keypad entry and pretentious names like the Metropolitan or Urban Oasis. Laura had given him a spare key to our house, which meant she probably had one to his place too. I was right. I found Scott's spare key in Laura's jewelry box, hidden behind her grandmother's pearls. Breaking and entering would have been illegal, but using a key I found in my own house, that was just visiting. I didn't steal anything or cause permanent damage. Instead, I rearranged his life in subtle, maddening ways. I changed his thermostat settings, moved his furniture 6 inches in every direction, and replaced his expensive coffee with decaf. I also left evidence of my visit, photos of Laura and Scott together, printed from her phone, scattered across his bed with a note, "Smile, you're on candid camera." The psychological effect was immediate. Scott started looking over his shoulder, checking his locks obsessively, jumping at shadows. Laura noticed his increased paranoia and started getting paranoid herself. "Someone's been in my car," she told me one evening, her voice tight with anxiety. "I'm sure of it. Things are moved around." "Are you sure you're not just stressed from work?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "You've been putting in a lot of late nights lately?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. Did I know? How much did I suspect? But Laura had always been arrogant, always convinced she was smarter than everyone around her. She decided I was still the clueless husband. "Yeah, maybe you're right," she said finally. "The Morrison case has me on edge." There was no Morrison case. I'd checked. The third phase was social destruction. I started attending every neighborhood event, every school function, every community gathering where Laura and Scott might appear together. I played the devoted husband and father, chatting with other parents, volunteering for committees, being visible and likable. Meanwhile, I made sure people saw Laura's behavior. At the spring block party, I watched her sneak away from our conversation to text Scott. I loudly asked if she was okay, if work was calling again, making sure nearby neighbors heard how often she was distracted by the office. "You work too hard, honey," I said, loud enough for the Hendersons and the Patels to hear. "You're always on that phone, always rushing off to handle some crisis. I worry about you." Laura's face flushed with embarrassment, but she couldn't call me out without looking even worse. She was trapped between her affair and her public image, and I was tightening the noose with every social interaction. The breakthrough came when Beth's friend Emma posted a TikTok video that went viral in our school district. Emma had filmed herself doing a dance trend, but in the background, clearly visible, were Laura and Scott kissing in the parking lot of the school auditorium during the spring concert. "OMG, my friend's mom is totally cheating on her dad," Emma had captioned the video. "This is so awkward, #drama alert, #cheaters exposed." Within hours, the video had hundreds of views from local parents, teachers, and students. The comments section was brutal. "Poor Mr. Fairburn, he seems so nice. I always thought she was fake. Now we know why." "Someone should tell the husband. Pretty sure he already knows. Look how miserable he looks at school events." Laura was mortified. She called the school, demanded they make Emma take down the video, threatened legal action, but the damage was done. Screenshots had been shared, the video had been downloaded, and the story was spreading beyond social media into real-world conversations. That night, Laura confronted me directly for the first time. "Did you see that video?" she asked, her voice shaking with rage and fear. "What video?" I was making dinner, chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. "The TikTok video. Emma Peterson's video from the concert." "I don't really do TikTok, Laura." "What was on it?" She studied my face, looking for tells. "Nothing important, just teenage drama." But I could see the panic in her eyes. Her carefully managed double life was crumbling, and she was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, her husband wasn't as stupid as she'd thought. That weekend, Scott tried to break things off. I know because I was listening to their phone conversation through the baby monitor I'd hidden in Laura's car. The audio quality wasn't great, but I caught the gist of it. "This is getting too complicated," Scott said. "People are talking, Laura. My clients are asking questions. Maybe we should cool things off for a while." "You're abandoning me." Laura's voice was shrill, desperate. "After everything I've risked for you? I'm not abandoning you. I'm being practical. Your husband might know something. That video, the weird stuff happening at my apartment." "Jason doesn't know anything. He's completely clueless." "Are you sure about that?" There was a long pause. "Yes," Laura said finally, but she didn't sound convinced. That's when I knew it was time for the final phase. Laura was vulnerable, Scott was wavering, and public opinion had turned against them. All I needed was the right moment to spring my trap. The opportunity came when Laura's parents announced they were visiting for Beth's birthday. George and Susan Hartwell were old-school conservatives who'd never fully approved of their daughter's career focus or her modern approach to marriage. They'd always liked me, though, appreciated that I was a stable provider and devoted father. I decided to accelerate my timeline. If I was going to destroy Laura's life, I might as well do it in front of an audience that mattered to her. Laura's parents arrived on a Thursday evening in their pristine Buick, the same car they'd driven for 8 years because it still runs perfectly fine. Thank you very much. George Hartwell was a retired insurance adjuster who'd spent 40 years investigating fraud and lies for a living. Susan was a former elementary school principal who could spot BS from 3 counties away. If anyone was going to see through Laura's deception, it would be them. Jason. Susan hugged me warmly at the front door. You look thin? Is Laura not feeding you? I've been working out more, I said, which was true. The boxing gym had become my second home, a place to channel my rage into something productive. Laura's been busy with a big case, so I've been handling more of the cooking. George shook my hand with the firm grip of a man who'd sized up liars professionally. What kind of case keeps her out past dinner time 3 nights a week? I exchanged a meaningful look with him. Corporate litigation, very demanding client. Laura appeared in the hallway, looking frazzled. She'd been upstairs on the phone with Scott, trying to coordinate their story for the weekend. Mom, Dad, you're early. We're exactly on time, Susan said, checking her watch. 7 o'clock, just like we planned. Right, of course. Work ran late, and I haven't had time to prepare dinner. Don't worry about it, I said smoothly. I made a reservation at Antonelli's for 8:30. Your parents love Italian food. Laura's face went pale. Antonelli's was where she'd had her first date with Scott, where they still met for lunch twice a week. The staff knew her well, too well, but she couldn't object without raising suspicions. That's thoughtful, she managed. Dinner was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. I played the perfect son-in-law, asking about George's golf game and Susan's garden club, while Laura squirmed in her seat every time the waiter smiled at her with obvious recognition. Mrs. Fairburn, Tony, the head waiter, approached our table with enthusiasm. So good to see you. Will Mr. Williams be joining you tonight? The silence that followed could have been cut with a steak knife. Laura's face cycled through several shades of red while her parents looked confused. Mr. Williams? George asked. I think you have me confused with someone else, Laura said quickly. Tony's face fell. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, you and the gentleman with the Vespa, you come in here every Tuesday and Thursday for lunch. Nice young man, always orders the salmon. You must be thinking of someone else, I said helpfully. Laura usually eats lunch at her office. Don't you, honey? Yes, Laura whispered. At the office. The rest of dinner was excruciating for Laura, delightful for me. Her parents kept asking innocent questions about her work schedule, her new cases, her lunch habits. Every answer dug her deeper into a hole of contradictions and obvious lies. Back at the house, I suggested we all have coffee in the living room while the girls played upstairs. This was phase 1 of my endgame, establishing witnesses to Laura's behavior, people who would remember this weekend when everything came crashing down. Laura seems stressed, Susan observed when Laura excused herself to take a work call that lasted 45 minutes. She's been under a lot of pressure lately, I agreed. New responsibilities at the firm, demanding clients. Sometimes I wonder if she's in over her head. George nodded thoughtfully. In my experience, when someone starts acting out of character, there's usually a reason. Changes in routine, unexplained absences, defensive behavior, these are red flags. What kind of red flags? The kind that suggests someone's not being entirely truthful about their activities. We locked eyes across the coffee table, and I knew George suspected something. He'd spent decades investigating insurance fraud, after all. A cheating spouse probably looked familiar. Friday was Beth's actual birthday, and I'd planned a surprise party for Saturday afternoon. Laura had tried to get out of it, claiming work obligations, but her parents' presence made that impossible. She was trapped in her own home for the entire weekend, unable to see Scott, unable to maintain her normal affair routine. I watched her unravel hour by hour. She snapped at the girls over minor infractions, spent hours on her phone handling work emergencies, and jumped every time the doorbell rang. By Friday night, she was drinking wine with dinner, something she rarely did. Are you feeling all right, sweetheart? Susan asked during dessert. You seem agitated. I'm fine, Mom, just tired. Maybe you should take some time off, George suggested. Spend more time with your family. These girls are growing up fast. Laura's laugh sounded forced. I can't just abandon my clients, Dad. I have responsibilities. More responsibilities than to your husband and children? The question hung in the air, like smoke. That night, I heard Laura crying in our bedroom, the bedroom I hadn't slept in for 2 months. Soft, frustrated sobs that might have moved me once upon a time. Now they just sounded like the soundtrack to justice. Saturday morning, I put my plan into motion. While Laura was in the shower, I used her phone to send a text to Scott. Parents are driving me crazy. Need to see you. Meet me at your place at 2 p.m. Can't wait to feel you inside me again. Then, I deleted the message from her sent folder and waited. The party was scheduled for 3 o'clock, with neighbors, school friends, and their parents invited. I'd specifically included families where the parents were known gossips, the kind of people who would spread whatever they witnessed to the entire community within 24 hours. At 1:45, I suggested Laura run to the store for more ice cream. We're running low on vanilla, and you know how the kids love it with cake. Can't you go? She asked, clearly not wanting to leave during party setup. I need to finish decorating, and your parents are helping with the games. It'll just take 20 minutes. Laura reluctantly agreed, grabbing her keys and purse. What she didn't know was that I'd already bought extra ice cream and hidden it in the garage freezer. She was going on a wild goose chase that would take her right past Scott's apartment building. At exactly 2:15, Scott called the house phone, frustrated and confused. I answered with a cheerful, Fairburn residence. Oh, hi. Is Laura there? She's not available right now. Can I take a message? This is Scott Williams. We had an appointment and she's not here. Scott Williams? I said loudly, making sure George and Susan could hear from the kitchen. I don't think I know you. Are you a client of Laura's? There was a pause. Something like that. Just tell her I called. Of course. I'll let her know Scott Williams called about your appointment. She should be back soon. I hung up and walked into the kitchen where Laura's parents were frosting the birthday cake. Who was that? Susan asked. Someone named Scott Williams. Says he had an appointment with Laura. I shrugged. Must be work-related. George's expression was unreadable, but I caught him exchanging a look with Susan. They were putting pieces together. Laura returned 20 minutes later, empty-handed and frustrated. They were out of vanilla, she lied. That's okay, I said. Oh, by the way, someone named Scott Williams called. Said you missed an appointment? The color drained from Laura's face. What did you tell him? Just that you'd call him back. Why? Is it important? No, it's nothing. Just a client who's overly demanding. But her hands were shaking as she poured herself a glass of wine. And it wasn't even 3 o'clock yet. The party started right on schedule. 23 kids, 34 adults, all crowded into our backyard for what would become the most memorable neighborhood gathering of the year. I played the perfect host, grilling burgers, organizing games, making sure everyone felt welcome. Laura tried to play her part, but the stress was showing. She drank too much wine, snapped at children who got too loud, and kept checking her phone obsessively. Several parents commented on her behavior. Is Laura feeling okay? Asked Jennifer Martinez, Diana's sister-in-law. She seems off. Work stress, I explained with a concerned husband's sigh. She's been putting in crazy hours lately. I keep telling her to slow down, but you know how dedicated she is. At 4:30, during the height of the party, Scott Williams showed up. He appeared at our front door in his expensive jeans and designer polo shirt, holding a gift bag and wearing the confused expression of a man who'd walked into the wrong movie. Through the window, I watched him ring the doorbell, check his phone, ring again. I answered the door with my biggest smile. Can I help you? Hi, I'm Scott Williams. I think there might be some confusion about... Is Laura here? Laura is my wife, I said, loud enough for nearby parents to hear. Are you the Scott Williams who called earlier about the appointment? Yes. She asked me to... We were supposed to meet and... Oh, I said, as if a light bulb had just gone on. You must be here for the party. How thoughtful. Laura didn't mention she'd invited any of her work colleagues. Scott's face went through several expressions. Confusion, panic, realization, and finally, trapped resignation. Actually, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Nonsense. Any friend of Laura's is welcome here. Come on back. Meet the family. I practically dragged him through the house to the backyard, where Laura was refilling her wine glass at the drinks table. When she saw Scott, she dropped the bottle. Pinot Grigio splashed across the patio, and the sound of breaking glass brought every conversation to a halt. "Laura!" I called out cheerfully. "Look who's here! Scott Williams from your office. He brought a gift for Beth." The silence that followed was deafening. 34 adults and 23 children all stared at Laura, who looked like she'd seen a ghost, and Scott, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. He's not," Laura stammered. "Oh, how rude of me," I continued, still playing the oblivious host. "Scott, let me introduce you to everyone. This is Laura's father, George, and her mother, Susan. George used to investigate insurance fraud, so he's great at reading people." George stepped forward with his investigator's stare, sizing up Scott like a suspect in a lineup. "Pleasure to meet you, Scott. What kind of law do you practice?" I'm not a lawyer," Scott said weakly. "Oh?" Susan joined the conversation. "What do you do?" "Real estate?" "How interesting," George said. "And how do you know our Laura?" The crowd was gathering now, sensing drama like sharks smelling blood in the water. Laura looked desperately around the group, realizing she was trapped in front of everyone who mattered in her social world. We met at a conference," she said finally. "What kind of conference?" asked Bob Henderson, our next-door neighbor and the biggest gossip in the subdivision. "Legal conference," Laura said. "Real estate conference," Scott said at the same time. The contradiction hung in the air like a neon sign. I watched faces in the crowd, saw the moment when understanding dawned on the smarter parents. Jennifer Martinez whispered something to her husband. The Patels exchanged knowing looks. Mrs. Greeley from down the street actually gasped. "Well," I said, clapping Scott on the shoulder, "however you two met, we're glad you could make it to Beth's party. Laura talks about you all the time." That was the final straw. Laura set down her wine glass with shaking hands and fled into the house. Scott stood frozen for a moment, then mumbled an excuse about remembering another appointment and practically ran for his Vespa. The party continued, but the energy had shifted completely. Adults clustered in small groups, whispering and speculating. Children played their games, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around them, and I continued playing host, accepting sympathetic looks and concerned questions with the grace of a man who had no idea his world had just publicly imploded. "Is everything okay?" Diana asked quietly, appearing at my elbow with a knowing look. "I'm not sure," I said, loud enough for nearby parents to hear. "Laura's been acting strange lately, working late, taking mysterious phone calls, meeting with clients I've never heard of. I'm starting to wonder if there's something she's not telling me." It was a masterful performance, if I do say so myself. By the time the last guest left at 6 o'clock, the story was already spreading through the neighborhood phone tree. Laura Fairburn, the stuck-up lawyer who thought she was better than everyone else, was apparently having an affair with some young real estate agent, and her poor husband had just found out at their daughter's birthday party. The truth was even better than fiction. Sunday morning brought a reckoning that had been building for months. Laura's parents left early, claiming a sudden need to get home, but not before George pulled me aside for a private conversation in the garage. "Jason," he said, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years investigating lies, "I don't know what's going on between you and Laura, but I want you to know that Susan and I think the world of you. You're a good man, a good father, and you deserve better than whatever this is." He gestured vaguely toward the house where Laura was hiding in the bedroom, claiming a migraine. "I appreciate that, George, really. If you need anything, legal advice, financial help, someone to watch the girls, you call us. Family isn't always about blood, son. Sometimes it's about choosing the people who deserve your loyalty." After they left, the house felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. The girls were at friends' houses for sleepovers, leaving Laura and me alone for the first time since her public humiliation. I found her in our bedroom, still in her pajamas at noon, staring at her phone with red-rimmed eyes. "We need to talk," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed we hadn't shared in 2 months. "I don't know what you want me to say." Her voice was hoarse from crying. "How about the truth? For once in the last 6 months, how about you tell me the truth?" Laura looked up at me, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the woman I'd married 15 years ago. Vulnerable, scared, human. Then her lawyer instincts kicked in and her expression hardened. "I don't know what you think you know, I know about Scott Williams. I know about the apartment downtown, the Tuesday and Thursday lunches, the burner phone you keep in your gym bag. I know about the hotel in Austin where you spent last weekend, supposedly at a legal conference that didn't exist. Her face went white. How do you... know? Because I'm not the clueless idiot you think I am, Laura. I'm a systems analyst. I find patterns, I trace digital footprints, I solve problems. You've been the biggest problem in my life for 6 months, and I finally solved you. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Scott. But you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You got bored with your boring husband and your boring suburban life, so you decided to trade up. The only thing I don't understand is why you didn't just ask for a divorce instead of humiliating me behind my back. Because I knew you'd try to take the girls. The girls, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Laura, when's the last time you went to one of Beth's soccer games? When's the last time you helped Janie with homework? You've been so busy playing house with your boyfriend that you've barely been a mother to your own children. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, my voice rising. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've been sleeping in the basement for 2 months while you parade your affair around town? Is it fair that our daughters have been asking me why mommy doesn't love daddy anymore? Is it fair that I had to find out about your betrayal from text messages calling me a clueless loser? Laura's composure finally cracked. I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen, and now everyone knows. The neighbors, your parents, the school parents, your co-workers. By tomorrow morning, everyone in this town will know that Laura Fairburn is a cheating wife who got caught at her own daughter's birthday party. You planned this, she said suddenly, her lawyer mind putting pieces together. Yesterday, the restaurant, Scott showing up, you orchestrated all of it. I gave you opportunities to tell the truth. You chose to keep lying. You manipulative fool. She lunged at me, her manicured nails aimed at my face. I caught her wrists easily, holding her at arm's length while she struggled. Don't, I said quietly. Don't make this worse than it already is. She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing. What do you want from me, Jason? What will it take to fix this? Fix this? I stared at her in amazement. Laura, you've been screwing another man for 6 months. You've lied to me, to our children, to everyone we know. You've made me look like a fool in front of our entire community. There's no fixing this. So, what happens now? I pulled a manila envelope from the dresser drawer and dropped it on the bed beside her. Now you sign these. Laura opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were divorce papers, custody agreements, and financial settlements, all heavily weighted in my favor. You're giving me almost nothing, she said after scanning the documents. You're getting exactly what you deserve. I keep the house, primary custody of the girls, and most of our assets. You get your car, your clothes, and the privilege of explaining to Beth and Janie why mommy decided to break up their family. I'll fight this. I'm a lawyer, Jason. I know my rights. Fight it with what money? Your law firm's going to fire you within the week. Affairs with clients' business associates don't look good in corporate litigation. Scott's already lost 3 major deals because of the rumors about his personal conduct. Your reputation is shot, your career is over, and your parents think you are a disgrace. Laura stared at the papers, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. You've destroyed my entire life. No, Laura, you destroyed your life. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd done. She signed the papers with tears streaming down her face. Each signature was a small victory, a piece of justice served cold after months of betrayal and humiliation. I need to pack some things, she said when the last document was signed. I already packed for you. Your suitcases are by the front door. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Maybe Scott will take you in. Maybe your parents will let you crash on their couch until you figure things out. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to blow up our marriage. Laura stood up unsteadily, looking around the bedroom that had been hers for 8 years. The girls will be fine, better than fine, actually, once they don't have to watch their mother lie and sneak around anymore. When can I see them? We'll work out a visitation schedule through the lawyers. But Laura, I waited until she looked at me. If you ever try to turn our daughters against me, if you try to poison them with your version of events, I will make what happened yesterday look like a friendly disagreement. Are we clear? She nodded, defeated. I followed her downstairs and watched through the front window as she loaded her suitcases into her BMW. Several neighbors were conveniently working in their yards, pretending not to watch the final act of Laura's suburban downfall. She sat in her car for a long moment, staring at the house where she'd lived for 8 years, then drove away without looking back. I poured myself a beer and sat on the front porch, enjoying the silence. Mrs. Greeley waved from her garden, and I waved back. Bob Henderson gave me a thumbs up from his driveway. Diana Martinez walked over with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "Rough weekend?" she asked, settling into the chair beside me. "Actually, it went exactly as planned." "And how do you feel about that?" I considered the question seriously. How did I feel? Relieved, certainly. Vindicated, absolutely. Satisfied with the outcome, without a doubt. But also empty, in a way I hadn't expected. "Like I won a war I never wanted to fight," I said finally. Diana nodded. "The best revenge is a life well lived," they say. Then I guess I've better get started on that. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over our quiet suburban street. Tomorrow, I'd have to explain to Beth and Janie why their mother had moved out. Tomorrow, I'd have to start rebuilding our family as a single father. Tomorrow, I'd have to figure out how to move forward from the wreckage of my marriage. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The next 3 weeks unfolded exactly as I'd predicted, with the ruthless efficiency of a well-designed system crashing down. Laura's professional life imploded first. Her law firm, Henderson and Associates, had built its reputation on discretion and moral integrity, 2 qualities that became questionable when security footage from Antonelli's restaurant surfaced showing Laura in compromising positions with Scott during what were supposed to be client meetings. The footage wasn't something I'd arranged, but I certainly didn't discourage Tony the waiter when he mentioned that the restaurant's insurance company had requested all security recordings for the past 6 months after a slip-and-fall lawsuit. Sometimes karma just needs a little nudge in the right direction. "Jason?" Beth stood in my bedroom doorway Tuesday morning, holding her backpack and looking older than her 12 years. "Kids at school are saying things about Mom." I sat on the edge of the bed and patted the space beside me. "What kind of things?" That she and some man." She struggled with words too adult for her age. "That she wasn't being faithful to you. There's no parenting manual for this moment when you have to confirm your child's worst fears while somehow protecting their innocence. I chose honesty, carefully measured. Your mom made some choices that hurt our family," I said. "She developed feelings for someone else, and she acted on those feelings instead of talking to me about problems in our marriage. Is that why she moved out? Yes. Is it my fault? Did I do something wrong?" I pulled Beth into a hug, feeling her small body shake with suppressed sobs. "No, sweetheart. This has nothing to do with you or Janie. This is about adult problems that have adult solutions. You and your sister are the best things your mother and I ever did together. But now you hate each other. I don't hate your mom, Beth. I'm angry and disappointed, but I don't hate her. And no matter what happens between us, we both love you and Janie more than anything in the world." It was a pretty lie, the kind parents tell to protect their children from ugly truths. The reality was that I felt nothing for Laura anymore. Not love, not hate, just a cold indifference that was somehow worse than either emotion. Janie, at 9, handled the situation with the resilience of youth. She missed having Mom around for bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes, but she adapted quickly to our new routine. Beth, more perceptive and closer to understanding adult complexities, struggled more with the changes. Meanwhile, the neighborhood gossip mill worked overtime. I learned through Diana that Laura was staying at an extended stay hotel near the airport, paying weekly rates because she couldn't find anyone willing to take her in long term. Her parents had offered conditional support. She could come home to Oklahoma if she agreed to counseling and cut all contact with Scott. Laura, predictably, had refused. Scott's life was falling apart even faster than Laura's. His real estate license was under review by the state board after complaints about his unprofessional conduct. 3 major deals had fallen through when clients learned about his affair with a married attorney. His landlord had given him notice after other tenants complained about suspicious activity in his apartment. Apparently, my little rearrangement visits had made him paranoid enough to install security cameras, which then captured him having loud, drunken arguments with Laura at all hours. The beautiful irony was that I didn't have to do anything else. The affair had created its own destructive momentum, and I just had to sit back, and watched the dominoes fall. On Thursday afternoon, I was picking up the girls from school when I ran into Claire Barnett, Laura's former divorce attorney. Claire was a shark in a business suit, known for extracting maximum settlements from cheating husbands. Seeing her in the elementary school pickup line was unexpected. "Jason," she said, approaching my car window, "I wanted to talk to you. If this is about Laura's case, you should contact my attorney. Actually, I'm no longer representing your wife." Claire's smile was carnivory. "Conflict of interest, you might say." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of conflict?" "The kind where I realized my client was lying to me about material facts in her case. Laura told me she was the sufferer of emotional abandonment, that you were controlling and possibly abusive. She painted herself as a woman driven to seek comfort elsewhere by her husband's neglect. And now? Now I've seen the evidence. The timeline of her affair, the financial records showing her spending on hotels and gifts for her boyfriend, the testimony from neighbors about her behavior. Laura wasn't driven to infidelity. She chose it, planned it, and lied about it." Claire handed me a business card. "I don't usually do this, but if you need any additional documentation for your custody case, call me. Some lawyers will represent anyone for money. I prefer clients who tell the truth." That evening, after the girls were in bed, I sat in my basement office, the same room where I'd planned Laura's downfall, and reflected on how completely my life had changed. 3 months ago, I'd been a faithful husband living a lie. Now I was a single father living in truth, and the difference was remarkable. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Wine on the porch? I have news." I found her waiting on my front steps with a bottle of Cabernet and an expression of barely contained excitement. "Okay," I said, settling into the porch swing beside her. "What's got you looking like the cat that ate the canary?" "I ran into Scott Williams at the grocery store today, and he's leaving town. Lost his job, lost his apartment, and apparently Laura's been calling him nonstop, begging him to take her with him." "Is he going to?" Diana's grin was wicked. He told her, and I quote, "You're crazy if you think I'm dragging your drama to another state." This was supposed to be fun, not a lifetime commitment. I felt a moment of something that might have been pity for Laura, followed immediately by satisfaction. She'd gambled everything on a man who saw her as entertainment, not as a partner. The cosmic justice of it was almost perfect. "There's more," Diana continued. "Laura's been blacklisted from every major law firm in the city. Word travels fast in legal circles, and nobody wants to hire someone with her baggage. She's looking at starting over somewhere else, probably in a much smaller market." "Good," I said, and meant it. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood settle into evening routines. Porch lights came on, dogs barked at passing joggers, and somewhere down the street, someone was grilling burgers for dinner. It was peaceful, normal, everything I'd thought I'd lost when my marriage exploded. "Can I ask you something?" Diana said. "Shoot. Do you ever feel guilty about how this all played out?" I considered the question seriously. Did I feel guilty about destroying Laura's life? About orchestrating her public humiliation? About systematically dismantling everything she'd built? No, I said finally. I feel like I leveled the playing field. Laura had 6 months to make different choices. She could have asked for a divorce, gone to counseling, or at least been honest about what she was doing. Instead, she chose to lie, cheat, and humiliate me while pretending to be a devoted wife and mother. And Scott? Scott knew Laura was married. He knew she had children. He chose to pursue a relationship with a married woman, and he chose to mock her husband behind his back. They both made their beds. Diana nodded thoughtfully. I went through something similar with my ex-husband, but I didn't have your strategic approach. What did you do? I cried a lot, ate too much ice cream, and let him take half of everything in the divorce. Then I spent 2 years in therapy learning to trust people again. Any regrets? Only that I didn't fight harder for what I deserved. We finished the wine as darkness settled over the neighborhood. Diana helped me carry the glasses inside, and we stood in my kitchen, suddenly aware that we were alone in a house where my children were sleeping upstairs, and my ex-wife would never return. I should go, Diana said, but she didn't move toward the door. You should, I agreed, but I didn't step away from her. The kiss was inevitable, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as months of shared conspiracy and growing attraction finally found expression. When we broke apart, Diana's eyes were bright with possibility. This is complicated, she said. Everything worth doing is complicated. The girls. We'll meet you properly when I'm ready to introduce you properly. But Diana, I'm tired of being careful, tired of protecting other people's feelings while ignoring my own. Laura taught me that life's too short to waste on people who don't value what you offer. Diana smiled, the same smile that had convinced me to trust her with my revenge plans months ago. In that case, I should probably mention that I've been hoping you'd kiss me, since the night you explained how you were going to destroy your wife's life. That's either very romantic or deeply disturbing. Can it be both? I laughed, really laughed, for the first time since discovering Laura's affair. I think we're going to get along just fine. 6 weeks after Laura moved out, I received a call that would close the final chapter of our marriage. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was reviewing quarterly reports at my office when my phone rang. Mr. Fairburn, this is Detective Rodriguez with Dallas PD. I need to speak with you about your wife, Laura Fairburn. My blood went cold. Despite everything Laura had done, she was still the mother of my children. Is she hurt? What's happened? She's fine, physically, but she's been arrested for maltreatment and stalking. She listed you as her emergency contact. Stalking who? Scott Williams. Apparently she's been following him, showing up at his workplace, calling him dozens of times a day. Last night, she broke into his new apartment and was found sleeping in his bed when he came home from a date. I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of disgust and weary resignation. Detective, I need to be clear about something. Laura and I are divorced. I'm not responsible for her actions, and I'm not interested in bailing her out of whatever mess she's created. I understand, sir, but she's asking to speak with you. Says it's about your children. That changed everything. Whatever Laura had become, she was still Beth and Janie's mother, and I couldn't let my daughters suffer because of their mother's breakdown. An hour later, I sat across from Laura in a sterile interview room at the Dallas County Jail. The woman facing me bore little resemblance to the polished attorney I'd married. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and her eyes had the wild look of someone who'd lost touch with reality. Jason, she said, reaching across the table for my hands. I pulled them away. Thank God you came. I need you to help me fix this. Fix what, Laura? You broke into your ex-boyfriend's apartment. You've been stalking him for weeks. There's nothing to fix here. There's only consequences for your choices. You don't understand. Scott and I, we had something real. This is all just a misunderstanding. Laura, Scott Williams filed a restraining order against you. He's told everyone who'll listen that you're unhinged. He's moved twice to get away from you. What part of that suggests you had something real? He's just scared because of what you did. The way you humiliated us at Beth's party. The way you turned everyone against us. If I hadn't interfered, you'd still be sneaking around behind my back, lying to our children and making me look like a fool. At least now everyone knows the truth. Laura's composure cracked completely. I lost everything because of you. My job, my home, my reputation, everything. You lost everything because you chose to have an affair instead of working on our marriage or asking for a divorce. Every consequence you've faced is the direct result of decisions you made. The girls need their mother. The girls need stability, honesty, and a parent who puts their welfare above her own selfish desires. Right now, that's me. Laura stared at me with something approaching hatred. You planned all of this. From the moment you found out about Scott, you planned to destroy my life. I planned to protect myself and our daughters from the fallout of your choices. If that destroyed your life, maybe you should have made better choices. I want to see Beth and Janie. That's up to the court now. You're facing criminal charges, Laura. Stalking, breaking and entering, maltreatment. Even if you avoid jail time, you'll be on probation. The custody agreement we signed gives me grounds to limit your visitation if you're deemed a threat to the girls' well-being. I would never hurt my children. You've been hurting them for months. Do you know that Beth cries herself to sleep because she thinks your affair was somehow her fault? Do you know that Janie asks me every day when Mommy's coming home and I have to explain that Mommy made choices that mean she can't live with us anymore? Laura's face crumpled. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, and now you have to live with it. I stood to leave, but Laura's voice stopped me at the door. Jason, I'm sorry for all of it, the affair, the lies, the way I treated you. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I turned back to look at her one last time. This woman who'd shared my bed for 15 years, who'd given birth to my daughters, who'd thrown away everything we'd built together for a man who couldn't even be bothered to answer her calls. I know you are, Laura, but sorry doesn't undo the damage. Sorry doesn't give me back the months I spent wondering what I'd done wrong. Sorry doesn't explain to our daughters why their family fell apart. So, what happens now? Now you face the consequences of your actions. You deal with the criminal charges, you figure out how to rebuild your life, and maybe you learn to make better choices. And us? There is no us, Laura. There hasn't been an us since the day you decided Scott Williams was more important than your marriage. I left her sitting in that sterile room, crying over the wreckage of a life she'd destroyed through her own choices. As I walked through the jail's corridors toward freedom, I felt the last vestiges of my connection to Laura Fairburn dissolve. Outside, Diana was waiting in her car, having offered to drive me to the jail when I explained the situation. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a bottle of water and started the engine. "How are you feeling?" she asked as we drove through downtown Dallas. "Like I just closed a very long, very ugly chapter of my life." "Any regrets?" I thought about it seriously. Did I regret the systematic way I'd exposed Laura's affair? Did I regret the public humiliation, the calculated destruction of her reputation, the cold precision with which I dismantled her life? "No," I said finally. "I regret that it came to this. I regret that Laura made choices that forced me to choose between being a sufferer and being ruthless. But I don't regret protecting myself and my daughters. And Laura? Laura made her bed. Now she gets to sleep in it." That evening, I sat on my front porch with a beer, watching Beth and Janie play in the yard with the neighbor kids. They were laughing, carefree in the way children should be, no longer walking on eggshells around their parents' failing marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Scott Williams. I heard about Laura's arrest. I want you to know I never encouraged her behavior after we broke up. I'm sorry for my part in what happened to your family." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Scott Williams was yesterday's problem, a footnote in the story of my marriage's collapse. I had no interest in his apologies or his guilt. Diana appeared beside me with 2 glasses of wine. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about justice," I said. "How sometimes it takes longer than you'd like, but it always comes around eventually." "And has justice been served?" I looked at my daughters, safe and happy in their own yard. I looked at Diana, a woman who valued honesty and loyalty. I looked at my house, my life, my future, all of it secure and peaceful in ways it hadn't been for months. "Yes," I said. "I think it has." 3 months later, Laura pled guilty to stalking and maltreatment charges. She received 2 years probation and was ordered to undergo psychological counseling. She moved back to Oklahoma to live with her parents, taking a job at a small-town legal aid clinic for a fraction of her former salary. Scott Williams left Dallas entirely, relocating to Austin where he started over in commercial real estate. I heard through the neighborhood gossip network that he'd gotten engaged to a woman he met at a coffee shop, someone single, uncomplicated, and completely unaware of his history with married women. Beth and Janie visited their mother twice a month, supervised visits that gradually became more natural as Laura worked through her issues in therapy. The girls seemed to understand, in the way children do, that their mother had made mistakes, but was trying to fix them. As for me, I married Diana on a Saturday afternoon in October, with my daughters as flower girls and a small gathering of friends and neighbors as witnesses. It was everything my first wedding hadn't been: honest, joyful, and built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than youthful assumptions about love. Standing at the altar, watching Diana walk toward me in her simple white dress, I thought about the long, ugly journey that had brought me to this moment. The betrayal, the revenge, the systematic destruction of my first marriage. All of it had been necessary to clear the ground for something better. Laura had taught me that some people will take everything you offer and still want more. Diana had taught me that the right person will value what you give and offer the same in return. As we exchanged vows, I made a silent promise to myself. I would never again allow someone to treat me with such casual cruelty. I would never again mistake tolerance for love or loyalty for weakness. The reception was held in our backyard, the same space where Laura's affair had been exposed at Beth's birthday party 18 months earlier. But there were no ghosts at this celebration, no shadows of past betrayals, just friends, family, and the promise of a future built on truth rather than lies. Late that evening, after the guests had gone home and the girls were asleep, Diana and I sat on our porch swing, her head on my shoulder, watching the stars appear in the clear Texas sky. Any regrets? She asked, the same question she'd posed so many times during our courtship. About Laura? About the divorce? About everything that happened? About any of it. I thought about Laura, probably sitting in her childhood bedroom in Oklahoma, starting over at 43 with nothing but hard-learned lessons and the hope of redemption. I thought about Scott Williams, building a new life in Austin and hopefully making better choices about the women he pursued. I thought about my daughters, resilient and loved, growing up with a clear understanding of the difference between right and wrong. No regrets, I said finally. Sometimes you have to burn down the old life to make room for the new one, even if it hurts people you once loved, especially then, because the people you once loved chose to hurt you first, and the only choice you have is whether to be a sufferer or a survivor. Diana squeezed my hand. I'm glad you chose to survive. So am I. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the aftermath of betrayal and built something honest from the wreckage of dishonest marriages. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to choose between easy lies and difficult truths. But tonight, for the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged, with exactly the person I was meant to be with, living exactly the life I'd earned through patience, planning, and the willingness to fight for what I deserved. Justice, as it turned out, was sweeter than revenge, and the best revenge, as Diana had once told me, was indeed a life well lived.